like to call to order a regular meeting of the Durant City Council. If you would please stand with me for an invocation and also a salute to our flag. Let's pray together. Our God, our Father in heaven, we're so thankful, God, for the cooler temperatures. We're thankful for rain and pray that more rain comes our way. God, we're thankful for the staff that work so hard for the betterment of our city, for the leadership of the teams that operate here. We pray for your guidance, your wisdom, your courage, and your clarity to make good decisions and do good work for the benefit of our citizens. We pray your blessing on each and every one of them, on all the folks that are represented here. And God, we just pray that you would continue to watch over each of us and bless our lives. Thank you so much for Jesus Christ, who's our Savior. In his name we pray. Amen. If you would join me to salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and be seated, please. If the clerk would call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Shear.
Here.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Here.
Mayor Tucker.
Here. The first item on the agenda is citizen comments. We have a citizen who signed up to make comments tonight. That's Georgia Ann Gibson. Georgia, if you'd like to come up to the podium, and hopefully the microphone is on, and I'll tell you the ground rules. You get to make whatever comments you'd like for 3 minutes. The city council will not probably respond because we respond to items that are on the agenda, and since we haven't heard your comments yet, we don't know what response we would make. So the podium is yours.
Thank you. I was encouraged to sign up tonight if I wanted to say anything, and I was here last week to talk about the Wilson Street area, which I have some of the ownership across the street there north on Wilson. So I'm coming tonight to see what the outcome is going to be and what direction we're going to go. My concern is about the traffic. I grew up north there, so I know that that can be a real problem with all the traffic. And if you're looking at 360 units, as the young man last week did talk about, that to me seems like a lot of traffic coming and going from that area. So that is my comment to you tonight, and my concern for that area, having grown up with apartments north of my property and now to the south there. That concerns me as far as coming and going around the college, coming from First Street, coming over to Briarwood area. So that is my feeling right now, and thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight, and I'm anxious to see what happens in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Next order of, that was the only person that signed up, by the way. The next order of business on the agenda is the consent items. And I have to make a motion that we remove one of these from the consent agenda, and we'll address it later on, and that is item 1A, the approval of the regular minutes of the August 8th meeting. We'll cover that shortly. The other items I would move that we leave in. Any comments or questions on the consent items for tonight? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve consent items B, C, and D.
And
E
there's
and
some on the
G.
next. There's some on the
Oh,
next
sorry.
page. B through H.
B through H.
B through H.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Shear.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. On item number 2, this is to consider items removed from consent agenda. On the consent agenda, item 1A was approval of regular minutes from August the 8th. And I apologize for being late to the party, but in reviewing those minutes earlier, in the minutes from that meeting, under paragraph 4, administration, subparagraph B, which was the discussion of a planned unit development near Linden Woods Drive, as the motion is described, the person who made the motion was not listed in those minutes, and the person that made the motion was Dr. Simulescu, and I would like the minutes to reflect that. And that's my only adjustment to that item. Questions or discussion around that? I move that we approve those minutes with that adjustment that I just described.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number 3 is information items, and this will be the July financial reports and the August sales tax reports. If Ann is here, and she is, to present those numbers for us, please.
Good evening. I think you got three major fund report. This is the first month of the new year, the July report. The first one is general fund. Our revenue is about 9.2% compared to our budget, and our expense is about 9.76, and only for the operating expense is about 6.5% compared to our budget. And the reason of the sum, you can see the sum of department is higher than it's supposed to be 8.33%. The reason is because of the some expense, some payment, the kind of that contract that we pay annually, one-time payment. So over the year, it will slowly kind of absorbed it. This is for the general fund. And then the second one is capital improvement. You will see that capital improvement seems like not a lot of activity. That's because I haven't done the prior year rollover project yet, and you just approve it. There's one of the budget amendment is prior year budget rollover, the older project that remaining balance I'll roll over for this year. So this one is only the one that kind of like you approved for this year that we funded for this capital improvement. And the third one is the DCUA. The DCUA that average for the revenue that not including the you can see the revenue is on top of it. The 2020 airport 10 principal payment from there to the button that transferred from the general fund, all this is 100% transferred. So you will see that, oh, the revenue is pretty good, but based on the percentage. That is because all this we transfer one time for the whole year. And the average for the top of those revenue is about 10-12%. So it's not that bad, but this is the summertime, so our water usage will be higher. And the expense side is about, for the operating, is about 6%. And the overall is about, this one I did not have the number, but the same, some transfer, for example, the transfer to the insurance cash fund, I transfer one time for the whole year. So for the following 11 months, I will not transfer this expense. But the first month, I will transfer the one time. So you will see the transfer will higher. So this is our DCUA. And for the sales tax, we are fortunately, our sales tax really is pretty, I have to say, it's pretty well and pretty good. Compared to the last year, the same month, our sales tax increased about 2.13%. And the overall is about 3.85% increase compared for the prior 12 months. So is there any question?
You say the sales tax is pretty good. I think there's only been 1 month ever that was higher. So that's pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that wasn't in August either, by the way. That was
Well, I hope we can keep doing
Absolutely.
like this. Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any questions for Ann? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, we're on item number 4 under administration. The first item is item A, consider approval of a contract with Retail Strategies in the amount of $40,000 for retail recruitment services. And I think City Manager Rumsey has some comments on that.
Mayor, I would request that be tabled until our next meeting. They were going to try to be here tonight, and it didn't work out for them. So I think they're out of state. I'd like to, next meeting, set up a video link so they can make a short presentation to the council so you would better understand what they're doing.
Okay, any comments or questions on that? Okay, we'll take no action on item number A. Item number B now is under paragraph 4 of administration is consider approval of a resolution number 2023-18, the City of Durant Emergency Operations Plan update for this year. And Richard will update us on that. He brought all 228 pages of the report, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, start in.
Good evening, council. It is time again that the city, we have to update our annual EOP, Emergency Operations Plan for the City of Durant, and we have to bring it before council to get it approved, because then it goes to State Emergency Management for them to sign off, which then goes into effect October 1st for the state's fiscal year. So basically what it entails is just updating positions, names, phone numbers, police and fire department equipment, personnel, anything that it would have changed in the last year. That's all that gets updated.
No substantial changes to the
No,
plan from
not
last
this
year's
year.
plan.
Hopefully next year we will have a new section to put in there we will bring before. But
Okay.
That's all I have. Any
for
questions?
Richard?
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Where are we on the radar, being able to share that information with the local media?
What I was told a little over a week ago, I guess it was, and then this last week I got an email from Barron. Barron has never set up what's called the volume control patterns on how the radar tilts, spins, which different tilts it does, how it looks at weather. And I put them in contact with the National Weather Service in Norman and Fort Worth and got a conference call together, because to me, they kept asking me as the end user what I wanted to see. And I told them it's not what I want to see, it's what the National Weather Service needs to see to be able to better serve and protect the public and give better warnings. So they have worked that out between them. The email I got end of last week was that their engineers are almost through getting that software set up basically. And then on the city side, we had to wait to purchase the hardware that the city needs to get it installed because of the budget year. The radar was finished installed in June, mid-June, and because of our budget year ended June 30th and manufacturing delays, we could not get the equipment in before the end of the budget year, so we had to wait till after July 1st to purchase the equipment. From my understanding, the equipment is in, but with issues with some networking, computer, something over my head at the 911 center and the police department, they took precedence. So IT has been working there, fixing those issues, so they have not been installed yet at ours. As soon as that is installed and Barron finishes this up with the volume control patterns, everything should be in place for it to be up and running and for us to get the data at least started disseminating out to the National Weather Service, our local medias. I believe IT has also got the Apple developer account, which that was a nightmare working with Apple, getting for our app, for our mobile apps, for phones. The Android was fairly easy to do, but Apple caused issues because there was only one person's name on the account and that person was no longer with the city, and so it caused some issues. And so it's coming along, so it should not be very much longer from what I understand.
You don't have a firm date, though.
I do not, and I wouldn't want to give you one because it will probably be wrong.
Thank you for that update, Richard. Any other comments or questions on the plan update for this year? Questions of Richard? Okay, thank you, Richard. I'll move to approve the city's emergency operations plan for this year, 2023 and 24. This is resolution 2023-18.
I'll
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Next is item C, discussion, consideration, and possible action to modify contract 2021-19 for the library, and I'll let you explain.
Hi, good
Thank you very
afternoon,
much.
or good evening. I'm sorry that we have to bring this back before council. In July, you had approved a contract for the generator at the library, and due to a part being delayed or back ordered, that is not going to happen by the end of this month. And so the grant agency, Department of Commerce, extended our overall grant as well as others in the state because of all the delays until next June. So we're covered on that. The generator manufacturer is still saying it's going to be here within a couple of weeks, but I think we should extend it on to December 31st since the grant is extended, and that way we won't have to come back and do this again, hopefully.
I agree. Any questions or comments for Rebecca? No? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve C. Is it number
4C.
4C?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Item number 4D is an update of the University Boulevard project, and I understand by Wall Engineering. There's Brandon there.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good to be here tonight. I want to just give you a quick update on University Boulevard project. As you know, we're coming up on the initial and final milestone date for Phase 2 in October 4th. There have been some delays delay days that will be added to the contract, which we'll talk about in the next item, which is the change order. But as of right now, they're about 65% complete with Phase 2. That's Radio Road that's Radio Road to West Side on the eastbound lane. That's the last of their milestone dates. So once they get that open to traffic, that checks off their milestone date, and then it'll be on to the final completion date, which they have days between that and final completion per the original change order. The sidewalks are 99% complete. The sewer is complete. Storm drainage is 95% complete. So the good news is at this point that we expect them with the delay days, the stuff that was kind of out of their control, to hit their schedule and hit their milestones. So they should, per the city's standpoint, they're going to finish on time. So that's good news compared to what we've seen in the past.
Yes.
And have a little more to talk about in the change order. I can wait on those items to talk through the changes that have been made to the contract, both previously approved and by City Council, and some new stuff that's come up as well.
Any questions on the update before we start talking about the change order? That's fine.
I got one. How many
Okay.
delay days so far have they had?
You have not approved any so far, and the contract actually to date, we've not came back to council with updated delay days. So it's 54 days is what they're asking for as of the date of the change order, current change order. And we can go over that individually, but there's been 54 days to date, delay days. Most of those related to the muck excavation and the subgrade that we hit when we removed the lane there on the eastbound lane.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, then we'll go on to item number 4, which is discussion and possible action on accepting this change order number 8 from Shirley Construction in the amount of $304,184.06. So,
Thank you once again. So to kind of go through this is a change order that is bringing the project up to date. A lot of these items have been previously approved by council. If you'll remember in change order number 4, when Sorelli was reauthorized to come back, the City Council approved additional mobilization to both Sorelli and Brown increase in some line item fees that totaled around 180, between 180 and 190,000 is what was previously approved by council. So that's more than half of this change order is things that were approved within that change order number 4 that were to be paid to Sorelli based on actual cost. And there is actual cost data inside and back up to the change order that you should have included in your packet. So that's the vast majority of it. There's another almost 50,000 that you'll remember that after the project was bid, City Council voted to increase the width of the sidewalks to 6 feet. So that's almost 50,000 that's previously been approved by City Council. So 2/3 of the change order are things that have already been approved. With the rest of it, we'll kind of go through individually, kind of not line by line, but anything you need more clarification on, we'll be happy to provide. So about approximately between 40 and 50,000 of that change order is related to that muck excavation that we hit when we removed the eastbound lane. There was a tremendous amount of bad material under the roadway. So that's where about 50 grand of that went. That was paid out in actual quantities. So we had quantities for removals, quantity for ag base, quantity for fabric. So that's paid out as an actual amount. Additionally, there was a lot of miscellaneous changes. So that totals almost up to the total of the change order, but we had a whole list, as you'll see in the change order, of miscellaneous changes that were made, about $50,000 worth of miscellaneous of things that were approved. Those were approved on site by the city, Public Works and city staff, so all those have been approved as well. And you'll see the list, but it's things like the drainage on Estelle. When we got out there north of the project, there was a low area that we had to change things to make it drain a little better. That was some added curb and gutter, added removals. We added an additional driveway at the request of a citizen. There were some temporary drives that were added and then removed for the car dealership. Just the things you run into on a typical project. So there was 50,000 added, but there was also 40,000 taken away at the same time. Now, a portion of that 40,000 that was taken away is the sidewalk and work in front of the car wash that was previously presented to council. The recommendation of city staff was to remove that section of sidewalk. We had originally looked at a change order to increase the amount of sidewalk, but recommendation of city staff was to take that out. So what you see in front of you in the change order that's been removed again. So the work in that area that was previously planned will be taken out. So delay days. So let's talk about delay days. So there's 54 delay days in the contract. The muck excavation was 11 days worth. It took them 11 days to remove that. There was 27 days. The miscellaneous improvements or changes that we talked about, things that you run into as you construct a job like this, there was 27 days delay of those. Those were actually verified by our staff, so those are actual delays that had actually stopped work. And then the rest of it, 16 days of weather. That's since the very first of the job. Since day one of the job, there were 16 days of weather. So that totals up to that total of 54 days. That brings the substantial completion date to October the 29th would be the new substantial completion date. And then the contractor after that date would have the remainder of the work to complete, which would include any remaining drainage, getting the sod installed, grassing, any minor work that it takes to finish the project out. So that's kind of a summary of the change order items, both days and time. Be happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Brandon, on Larkspur, that's included in this, correct? Redoing that intersection?
Larkspur is included in that. So on Larkspur, for the width of the street at Larkspur, for a curb return like we have in the project, that's a properly designed curb return. And it's narrow. So what we're going to do there is similar to what was there previous. It's not going to look the prettiest, but we're just going to pour wide wing walls outside of Larkspur to make a wider turning radius. It's going to look a little bit silly. But until Larkspur's widened, Larkspur's only about 18 or 19 feet wide. Until that's widened out, there's not going to be any way to do anything kind of better. But at least that'll widen it out enough that we should have a better turning radius in there. And it'll also give us the ability with that widened out, if we ever do widen Larkspur, we'll be able just to kind of radius that in and add curb to it, add a gutter section onto that, and just scab onto that if we ever widen Larkspur onto the north. But yes, that is included in here. Thank you for reminding me on that. If you'll remember, it's kind of the same thing that the city, that Public Works did previously on Larkspur. They came in and poured some wider wings on Larkspur, kind of for the same issue. The street is just really narrow.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Any questions or comments for Brandon, Wall Engineering?
Overall, I think I would say the project's going well, which is a nice change from previous. It's finish on within the time allotted this time, and we're happy about that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Questions or comments on the change order?
I think my only comment is I don't love losing sidewalks, but I know we have to weigh our pros and cons here.
Any other? I'll make a motion that we approve the change order number 8 from Shirelli Construction in the amount of $304,184.06.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number F under 4, Administration 4. Item number F is consider approval of a resolution concerning bridge inspection responsibility by a local government for compliance with the National Bridge Inspection Standards. And this is Resolution 2023-19. Mr. Hightower.
Yes, this is a routine bridge inspection that we have to do to stay in compliant with national bridge inspections. We do this every year. ODOT will send us a list of inspecting companies, and we have the option to go with one of those or just let ODOT pick the ones that we want to use. And typically, that's the route we go, is with ODOT's recommendation. It's very time consuming if we pick one of our own inspectors, because we have to interview them and vet them and everything else, so it's a lot easier, and staff recommends that we let ODOT.
And then ODOT has to approve them anyways in the end, right?
Right.
So
So-
these are already approved by
Exactly.
ODOT, so it's a step ahead if you pick from their list,
Yep.
right?
Yes, sir.
And the resolution's in your board packet as well, specifically. Any questions or comments of Mr. Hightower on this resolution? Pretty straightforward. Thank you, sir. Do I hear
Thank
a
y'all.
motion?
Motion to approve 4F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number 4G1, G4G1, which is the considering an award of a bid for a deer hunting lease, and G4G2, which it would be to consider approval of this same deer lease, and this is bow hunting lease for those of you just listening and not reading.
That's correct. So we decided to try to bring back the bow hunting lease out of the lake. It's on the south side. Right now, it's not used for anything other than the hay lease, so it gives us an extra opportunity to get some revenue in for the lake. We had 4 bids. The top bid was Patrick Morgan for $5,800, and it'll be a 1-year lease with the option to renew every year by June.
What is the bow hunting season?
October?
Bow season runs from October 1st to January 15th.
And right now, because it's city-owned, nobody can hunt on it.
Right. We've done this in the past. We just stopped doing it a couple of years ago. It's on the south end where the Boy Scout camp and stuff is. They no longer use that down in there, because it's a grown up and everything, so we utilize it for bow hunting.
Have we ever had trouble with them not bringing more people than we agreed to in the lease on?
No,
during
we've
hunting
had
season?
trouble with the neighbors going on there.
Well, but see, I can see where this person now, if they're paying for it, they're going to help us to police that, right?
Yes,
Because they're going to pay for this.
Right.
Okay.
How many acres?
167.
Yeah.
So he's paying quite a bit for 167 acres of bow hunting. That's high.
No, 227.
227, but a lot of it's not.
Lot of it's
A lot
water.
of it's water, and some of it's across the road that's not utilized.
Really huntable. Gotcha.
So, that's still pretty high.
Any questions on the lease? I guess the city attorney's familiar with this as well.
I have reviewed it, Mayor.
Any comments or questions or concerns? Thank you, Ryan. Do I hear a resolution? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve 4G1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for item number 4G1, which is the award of a bow hunting deer lease. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Next, we need to consider item 4G2, the actual lease document.
Mayor, I might note on the actual lease, there's probably just a scrivener's error on paragraph 7J. It has an old date on there, old year of 2017.
I see that.
That can be cleared up just as a scrivener's error, but just wanted to note that.
Okay, with that correction, I move that we approve this bow hunting deer lease, contract number 2023-64.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number 4H, consider approval of a resolution establishing fees and costs charged by the City of Durant and the City Utilities Authority for Durant Services, which is contract 2023-15.
Okay, so what I'm planning on doing is we're updating fees. We're getting more fees established. I'm just going to go. The biggest deal is sponsorships. I don't know about you guys, but seeing ball fields with blank fences just doesn't sit right. So I'm trying to just sell banners to go through all of the or at least the complex. If we have big tournaments in other locations, places where we can hang sponsorship banners. This will help. It won't touch how much we spend on for rec leagues, but it will help advertise for companies to come in, and it will kind of narrow that gap. And if we're planning on having multiple movies in the park, and I'm in works of a big tournament next year, so this will help advertise. It'll get their name out. It'll be a 1-year renewal. So first year we'll pretty much buy the banners, and then every year they can renew it to get it hung up. That's a big one with the parks and complex. The lake, we are updating the fishing regulations to coincide with the Oklahoma Wildlife Department regulations. And we're going to bring back the boat launching fee of an annual permit of $25, a fishing guide permit, annual permit for $50. And if we decide as a city to host our own fishing tournament, I went ahead and put that on there. As of right now, I do not plan on playing a fishing tournament, but I figured might as well throw it all in there at once. Complex, if we start hosting our own tournaments, I have fees for large teams, small teams, and medium size. So depending on what sport, they all have a amount. And I'm going to try to have adult recreation leagues here starting in January if this is approved. Again, it just depends on how many people are on the team. Depends on how much it is. It ranges from $300 for recreation to $50 if it's a 2 or a 1 to 5 person team, because usually those sports don't cost a whole lot of money to run. So we're trying to keep the cost as low as possible to give as many people the opportunity to play. And then the banners and movie stuff again. Any questions?
Who's going to be running these adult recreational leagues?
I have a rec coordinator, and I'm hoping to get another one to help plan. But right now we're starting small. We had 500 and something people respond to the Facebook poll of if we did adult rec leagues, what they'd want, and over 130 asked for a softball league. So we're starting with softball, and then the second one was pickleball, and that was almost 100. So we're trying to get pickleball courts installed at Dixon Durant, just to incorporate those. They have the least amount of effort, but it gets the biggest impact.
Ryan,
Any questions or comments?
Ryan, how many parks do we have baseball fields at outside of the complex?
Keithley, 4, I think, off the top of my head, without really taking time to think about it.
Are those typically used for games or just practice?
Right now, they just use them for practice. All the games are done at the complex because, I mean, the fields are nicer at the complex than they are at other locations. Trying to offset it so it's the same, so we can get more tournaments out the complex, but yet have opportunity for the rec teams to play out in the actual field.
I was just looking at your sponsorships, that you had the sponsorships on both the parks and the complex, and I was just curious how realistic it was that we got sponsors for our parks that don't
pretty
run ball
much
games.
If they sponsor for one, they're doing for both of them. The only spot that they actually do play games right now is at Lloyd Plyler for T-ball, and that's because that's the only area we have the T-ball size fields. So if someone wants to sponsor those, they absolutely can. But right now, if they ask to sponsor, they're most likely sponsoring the complex because that's where most of our people go.
Comments or questions for Ryan? Thank you for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Do we hear a motion?
Motion to approve 4H.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Next is item 4I, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action on a sketch plat request for property near Peppernut and Red Bud Lane, which is 2023-19. Mr. Goode.
Hello. May I pass these out, please?
Please.
Thank you.
You may already have the information in your packet. I'm not sure. I don't know what's in your packet, but that's the survey boundary plat of the property we're talking about, showing where it's located. And if you flip over on the back side of that clip to it, is a page where all of the department heads have signed off on the sketch plat proposal, with the exception, I believe, of Danielle didn't. She had made a comment. I don't understand what her concern was, about orphaning property to the west, which would be Terabella 3, if I'm thinking correctly. I'm not sure how this would affect that at all. So I don't know what was in mind there. But anyway, give you a little background. My son Scott bought this property a little over 18 months ago, and in talking to community development, Danielle told him that she would not issue a building permit because the lot had not been properly platted when it was sold. And unfortunately, we were not aware of that at the time. We're looking for a solution to that after 18 months of discussion with her and various entities. We're still looking for a solution, so this is our Supreme Court, if you will. You guys have the authority to figure this out for us. So far, the people we've talked to, no one felt like they had the authority to make an executive decision and issue a building permit. The way that we got here, it was suggested that we file a sketch plat, run it through planning and zoning, which we did. They didn't feel like they had the authority to approve it because it didn't meet all of the requirements. But that got us here, and that's why we're here, and that's why we went that route. Basically, our request simply is that you would look at this survey boundary plat, and if we do a subdivision plat on this 1 acre, it's not going to have any more information, to my knowledge, than what you have in your hands right now, and the sign-off sheet that you have in your hands right now. Subdivision plat is going to have all these different signature blocks on it, be filed at the courthouse. That seems like overkill for a single lot. So our request, we respectfully ask that you would approve this as being a lot, even though it was illegitimately born, and instruct the community development people to issue a building permit upon request for this particular property. Lot appears to meet all requirements. There is a street, city street in front of it, paved, Peppernut. Rural Water 2 is available. You should have a letter from them in your packet saying they will service the lot. Electricity is available there. Durant doesn't offer city sewer there, so the usual in the area is a aerobic system, and that's available. And so everyone, as you see, has signed off saying that it meets their specifications.
I think, Dale, if I might, one of the concerns voiced earlier was that allowing this building permit or this replat would orphan some of the other lots that this owner, Mr. Attaway, may want to divide up and sell as a subdivision at some point later on. I also understand later on that Mr. Attaway may be redesigning his plat so that that's not an issue, so that each of these lots would then reach Peppernut. So that would make that a moot point if that's true. Is Mr. Attaway here?
Yes.
Is that close to true?
I'm in the process of getting my temporary plat revised, and that'll be true.
So at that point in time, it would, I don't speak for planning and zoning, but at that point in time, it sounds to me like with that thought, that idea in mind, it would meet the requirements for planning and zoning to get approval for a replat.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and it's my opinion that if there is a plat done, if Mr. Attaway decides to plat, then this parcel, this subject parcel, needs to be a part of that, because this parcel was divided and carved off of Mr. Attaway's property improperly. Doesn't mean it was intentional or with knowledge that it was being done improperly, but it was. And to allow this parcel to be platted defeats the entire purpose of our ordinances that require plats. And so while there isn't an apparent landlocked parcel that is created here, let's take it out of these two property owners. If this was someone other than was sitting here tonight, we wouldn't have any knowledge of the larger property owner's intent. So that larger property owner could just continue to carve off pieces and sell them in violation of the ordinance. And then those property owners could come back to council and say, hey, well, I didn't know this when I bought it, but I bought it and this one meets the requirements. Can you let us plat this one? And once this council says yes once, it's going to have a real hard time saying no later this meeting, because there's another one that you're going to have to address later this same meeting that is almost identical to this. Somebody has carved off a parcel improperly, and you've got a property owner that's asking you to allow them to proceed with the plat on an improperly divided parcel. So if that is the intent of Mr. Attaway as the larger parcel owner and the original owner of this parcel to plat, my suggestion is that those property owners get together and participate in that plat and bring that larger plat back, and then it's all done, and it's all done properly. And it doesn't, more than one property owner can participate in a platting process. It doesn't change Mr. Gode's property lines. They could keep those the same, and Mr. Gode and Mr. Attaway could participate in the platting of that larger parcel. That's the appropriate course of action here, and would have the same net effect. And instead of having two different platted areas, one surrounding the other, you just have one large plat. And that would be the most efficient way to go about that, and the proper way to go about that.
In an ideal world, that sounds good. We've been waiting on Mr. Attaway for 18 months to get this done with you guys.
Time is the challenge.
Well, here we are, and this could be an out parcel from that, or it could be included later after the fact. This lot is ready to go, been ready to go for 18 months, but unfortunately, we're unable to proceed because no one has had the authority or made the decision to approve anything other than go back. So I understand it would be nice if it was all done properly, but that would have been nice if it had been done 18 months ago. There was no discussion when this property was bought initially. When it was listed for sale subsequently, the then city manager called the real estate company and told them to remove their signs that they could not sell this property. It was illegal. So this has been, we've been around the block, and I appreciate city attorney's advice. I think technically he's correct. We're just caught in a whirlpool and would like to get out.
So my next thought, understanding your perspective, let's say that Mr. Gode didn't own this 1 acre square lot of property, that Mr. Attaway owned this entire tract of land, and he decided that this 1 acre property that's within the rest of his property was no longer useful to him, or let's say he needed some money and he wanted to sell off a part of it. Would the city approve a replat of this 1 acre by itself if Mr. Attaway, the owner of the larger tract, were to bring that to the city as a request? Is that a fair question?
I don't know. I mean, that is a possibility that a person, you're supposed to plat the entire area. If you're selling off parcels less than 10 acres within the city limits.
Understand, my proposal here, though, is let's say that we are going to sell off a tract. Mr. Attaway is going to sell off a tract that's less than 10 acres, and he comes and says, I want to replat this 1 acre. I want to keep the rest of it, but I want to sell this 1 acre off. Would the city approve of that replat?
I wouldn't recommend it because I believe it's in violation of the ordinance, because he's dividing a current parcel. This 1 acre was carved out of an existing parcel. It wasn't 1 acre on its own. that existed. It was carved out of a parcel, and actually out of the middle of a parcel. My understanding is the remaining part to the north and to the south was originally all one parcel there, and he carved part of it out of the middle. And so, if you were to do that, you're still defeating the purpose of the plating requirements, and that is to efficiently use and divide the property so that all remaining pieces of the property abut a street, have access to emergency services, trash, school buses, etc. And what has been done here and what would be done under your hypothetical defeats that, because you've got parcels here to the east of the larger parcel that have been sold off, and they have no access to Peppernut. They have no access to.
Well, in my hypothetical, it's just 2 tracks. It's the 1 acre tract, and then it's the rest of it.
But
So
Mr. Mayor,
you'd have to say has access.
Take that to its extreme, and the larger parcel owner keeps parceling off every time he needs money. He keeps parceling off the valuable parts that adjoin Peppernut, and then we're left with parcels that don't adjoin Peppernut, have little value. Everybody moves on, and now you've got parcels within the city limits that aren't efficiently used. They get grown up, they get neglected. They're not worth much because they've got platted area all in front of them with no easements back to them. And so you kind of have to look at taking it to the extreme and what would be done on the next one. And the next one you'd have a hard time saying no to if you decided to do that on the acre to the south, and then the next acre to the south. And finally you end up with a landlocked piece of property to the east that's not efficiently used. And so this, while it may make sense on this one, it doesn't make sense in the larger scheme, and it still directly violates the intent of the plating ordinances.
Well,
I'm going to say that leaving this lot for 18 months is not an efficient use of this property either.
Oh, it's not. The efficient use would have been the seller platting all of his property there appropriately before he sold it off, and that's what the ordinances require. What we can't ignore here is that this is the result of the seller's violation of the ordinance, and we are rewarding the seller if we ignore that, or if the council ignores that and goes ahead and lets the buyers plat those lots. And because then that takes away any seller's incentive to do things right. They can just sell off the valuable portions of their property and then go on down the road. And I'm not saying that's what Mr. Attaway, I'm not trying to throw Mr. Attaway under the bus, because I don't think that's what happened here. But that's what could happen. And that's why the process requires that you plat that. You don't have to plat them in identical 1 acre squares. This property can be platted in a way that conforms, and my understanding is there is at least an intent by Mr. Attaway to plat this in a way that conforms, that would leave Mr. Gode's lot exactly as it stands. And if that was the case, I believe it would fall squarely within the requirements of the plat and meet all platting requirements and would get my recommendation to pass it. But as it stands now, it just doesn't.
If he plats everything except this 1 acre, which he no longer owns, there's no problem with that.
No, this should be included in the plat.
He doesn't own this. If we don't want it as part of his plat, he can't, I guess he could force it with a court action. But if he no longer owns this, if he chooses to plat the remainder of his property, is there any problem with him doing that?
I think there is, because the acreage that remains that in his original lot that this was carved out of doesn't meet the requirements for platting either. The entire original parcel needs to be platted.
He doesn't own the total anymore, so he can't plat the balance of his property without this.
Well, he could if the owner of this lot simply gave him an agency or permission to plat it. That happens all the time.
Well, but if he didn't have that, then he couldn't plat the rest of his property?
He could certainly plat what he owns and what other property owners allow him to plat through agency.
Okay. And so they do that, and this is left out, then what happens to it?
Well, at that point, it might make sense to allow that to be platted because everything around it is done, but it's still the least efficient way to go about it, and because then you end up with two platted areas when it could just be one and should just be one.
Well,
and
sure.
until that other area is platted, I still believe this falls squarely outside of what's permissible by our ordinance.
Mr. Attaway, how much progress have you made towards a new replat, if you don't mind?
I've contacted Page, like the south side of the original lot, go to lot 4, which is one of the back we talked about. And that supposedly will meet the requirements of the frontage from Peppermint to the lot, they'll all be one lot in the back. As far as his spot, I mean, all that preliminary stuff's already done. You just gotta go change that part.
Change the lot descriptions, is that what you're saying? So how many lots would it be in your amended replat application? 4 lots total. And in this application, it shows 6.
Yeah, the two on the north end, I'm gonna have to change that to that being one lot.
Okay.
So that'd be the 2 changes, basically. That gives, owner of the 8 acres in the back right now, it's trying to sell it to another owner, basically. I can give him, I will sell him that right away. So I think it's a matter of pretty easy for Page to do. He told me it'd be pretty easy to do. That's why I'm saying after this meeting,
So timing-wise, I know a lot of these things we don't know the answers to, but timing-wise, how long does that take? Roughly, I don't know who can answer that question.
Well, I don't know how long it takes on a number of days, but what I can tell you is these two property owners are in exactly the same position timing-wise.
Right.
So a sketch plat, Mr. Goad has a sketch plat, which is really just an idea to get before council to say, hey, what do you guys kind of think about this?
Right.
And that's exactly where Mr. Attaway is as well. So I guess I don't understand the reluctance to work together if there is an opportunity to get this all done at the same time. My understanding is that the chairman of the planning commission has spoken with Mr. Attaway. I've seen a preliminary, just a hand drawing of the proposed, generally the proposed lines, and they appear as if they would meet the requirements of our platting requirements.
We just don't have that tonight.
I don't, not that I know of.
So that's why I'm saying timing-wise,
Our concern is time. We've waited 18 months for this to be done. It hasn't been done to this point. We don't feel like we need to be a part of his subdivision. There's no benefit to us to be included in that further process if this can be approved to stand alone.
But time doesn't cure a violation of the ordinance. It's not something that once someone violates the ordinance, if you wait 24 months or 18 months or 36 months, then you get to proceed. The sale of this lot to Mr. Goad without platting was a violation of the ordinance. And Mr. Goad's recourse really is against Mr. Attaway, frankly, not this council's job to correct a transaction between private landowners. Because I don't think you guys want to get in the position of curing issues that are really between private individuals.
That's the whole function of the city, is to work with its citizens.
There's really a building across the street where that's better handled, but I don't think anybody wants to be there either.
Mr. Goode, you have the floor. Mr. Hobbs has raised his hand to make a comment.
I'm a little involved, but not that involved with this. But so when Mr. Attaway started to do this, he got my opinion because he was gonna sell his house, which would be on the south, and then looking at maybe building a cabin. So I told him, I said, it's been a while since we did a plat, but go to the city. So my part is for me, future as being a builder and developer. If Mr. Attaway goes to the city, and I think it was Danielle, where he gets all the permits, says, yeah, you do this, you keep it under 4, because there was one tract in the back, I was actually gonna build their house too. As long as they had an easement and it reaches Peppernut, everybody gives him the okay. So through the years, what I've noticed, if I go to the city and you get all the okays, and it's like, people don't have the okay to give the okay, where I agree with Mr. Goode. All this was talked. Tim went to the city. I talked and I said, get their approval, don't take my approval. But he goes up there, and Brandon didn't see it. I'd actually even called Brandon. This is the deal I called Brandon about one time. And so he said, without seeing the deal, but like if you're under 4, because the main objective was the tract in the back having an easement to Peppernut for fire and all of that. That's a littler tract. So Tim was given a 30-foot easement. So I'm still, basically somebody didn't know the ordinance when they tell you, so I'm with the attorney. I'm not disputing that, but my problem is like Tim goes, I go in the future, I'm going with something here for you tonight. How do people know if people don't even know the ordinance when you go up there and you get approval? And if Tim pursues and he goes up there and he gets an approval, he thinks everything's good, he spends the money and pays Paige, everything we're good to go. And you get there and like, you know, which I mean, the law is the law, I get that. But I'm with Mr. Goode in respect of if everything touches Peppernut, it's a city paved street, I don't get the deal. And mine's more for that I was involved in respect. I told Tim to get approval. Tim went up there, got approval, just like Mr. Goode's got approval. Then you get there and you can't get approval because of something, you know, like that. And it's more future use that I don't get into this like what's going on right here also.
But let's be clear, he did not get approval. He almost got approval. Several city staff signed off on it, but the community development director did not. So there wasn't approval. There was almost, and there were several people that gave approval for what they could give approval for, but the community development director did not give approval. So there was not an approval for the landowner to plat this.
Right.
And you're right, there is a minor plat provision in our in our ordinances that has to do with 4 lots or fewer lots. But that says that there can be a minor plat if there's no new streets required or something like that. So if hypothetically, if Mr. Attaway had just owned these lots right along Peppernut and he divided them into 4, maybe sort of like the ones to the south there, that adjoining Redbud and Peppernut, where you just divide it into 4 lots and they all adjoin Peppernut, that's probably something to a minor plat because you don't actually have to create a new street.
Right.
But the way these lots are laid out up there to the north, they don't all adjoin Peppernut, and you have to adjoin a public street, not just an easement. You have to adjoin that street and have a certain amount of width and a build line, etc. And these lots simply don't comply without.
So for
plating
future
them.
use, if I have littler tracks, but what Tim's doing, or Mr. Attaway, if they all don't have to have the easement and they're touching like what his new sketch deal for future use for me, since they reach Peppernut, you qualify.
Well, I can't. That is one of the qualifications.
Okay.
There's others.
Because a lot of times I will get small tracks and divide.
Sure.
So let's say if I'm going to take 4 lots, if they can all reach and have their driveway meet their frontage on Peppernut, basically.
One of the requirements is that your lot has to have minimum frontage on a city street, and so yes, that's one of the requirements. If that requirement is not met, then your whole plat's going to fail. But just because you have that doesn't mean your plat's going to be successful if it doesn't meet some of the other things. But yes.
Okay, thank you guys.
One other thing that we discussed with planning and zoning was your section 155.025, variations and exceptions whenever the tract to be subdivided is of such unusual size or shape or is surrounded by such development or unusual conditions that the strict application of the requirements contained in these regulations would result in substantial hardship or inequity, the city council may vary or modify such requirements of design. At the same time, the public welfare and interests of the city are protected, the general intent and spirit of these regulations be preserved. You know, we're dealing with a puny little acre out here. It doesn't orphan anybody, it doesn't cut anybody off, it butts onto the public street 100%. We're just asking for relief. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Comments or questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, just for me, I don't believe, I understand what Mr. Goode is saying, but I don't believe section 155.025 applies here. This is not an unusually sized or shaped lot. This is a perfect rectangle and of very sufficient size to plat. An unusually sized or shaped lot might be one that you would get in a corner, or where a creek carves this particular shape that doesn't allow maybe 75 feet of frontage, but only allows 45 feet, but the lot itself may be sufficiently sized, but doesn't allow for a certain frontage along a public street. So I think this original plat, this original parcel is the one this council has to consider, not the one that was impermissibly carved off and sold to Mr. Goode. Yes, Mr. Goode's parcel is small, but it's not unusually sized or shaped according to, and to come into compliance with 155.025. It just doesn't,
Well,
simply
I'm
doesn't
not aware
apply.
of any 1 acre subdivisions, single lot subdivisions in the town. I'm thinking that would be an unusual size for a subdivision.
You're exactly right, Mr. Goode, and that's why this shouldn't happen, is because that's what we're going to end up with if this council allows that to continue to happen, is a bunch of 1 acre subdivisions.
Right. And at some point in time, maybe there needs to be a cutoff date that's publicized to everyone, and everybody is made aware of the situation. In the title companies, in the realtors, in the banks, I think that would be good for people to be aware. I certainly wasn't. I've done some things through the past that would not have complied ignorantly, unintentionally. But basically, we're past the point of we should have, could have, would have. We're here. We've been working 18 months trying to do something. What is the solution? If you can approve a building permit being issued for this, that's a solution. If you can't, then what do we do other than wait for the neighbor to do something that he's been working on 18 months and he doesn't really need our participation in to satisfy his own requirements? Should this be platted as a 1 lot subdivision? We can do that. It's going to cost probably $5,000, and we're going to have the same information in front of you that you have right now. We'll just be months down the road and money out of pocket. So whatever you can do, we would appreciate.
Comments, questions? No comments?
Seems to me the 2 property owners need to get together and fix this. And bring it to us.
If we do, what, if everything change all this up, how big, 50 foot to this property, you really know he wants.
I don't know. That's something you're just going to have to run up the flagpole with community. You're going to have to run that up the flagpole with community development to make sure that it meets the frontage and width requirements to a public street. Who's he? I don't know who he is. You'll just have to meet, if you're going to plat the larger parcel, you're just going to have to comply with all of the requirements that the city has, and that's not something we need to go over here. That's something you can take up with Community Development Office, and they have all of that.
Okay, I think this has gone on, this situation has gone on. Mr. Attaway, have you developed a lot of property before? So, Mr. Attaway, not having experience at developing property, was perhaps misguided by some folks, perhaps by the city staff, perhaps at the time thinking he had an approval when he in fact obviously did not have an approval. I think he acted on good faith. I think Mr. Goad acted on good faith when at Mr. Attaway's comment, he felt like that it was going to be platted or was approved to be platted. So I say all that to say that I'm in favor of granting this sketch plat request for this property, and I make a motion that we approve item number I in this instance.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
No.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
No.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
No.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Next is item number J, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a final plat request for Sunstar for property near South 9th and Rodeo Road, which is 2023-21. Mr. Hightower.
Yes. This applicant is looking to get his final plat approved. This housing development contains approximately 80 lots, mainly single-family homes. We didn't have any protests when this was put out to the public. It does comply with future land use map, and it was recommended by Planning Commission for approval.
Comments or questions on this request? Hearing none, I make a motion that we approve the final plat request for Sunstar LLC on this property near South 9th and Rodeo Road, which is 23-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number K is discussion, consideration, and possible action on a replat request for Baptist General Council of Oklahoma for property located near Wilson Street and Montgomery Drive, which is 2023-22. Mr. Hightower.
Yes, this is up by the college. This property is approximately 1.32 acres, shown on their plat. City water, city sewer is available. Staff is signed on this to approve this plat. It does line up with current land use map, shows this area as two-family residential. This request is in line with the future land use map, and the Planning Commission recommends approval of this plat.
And they had a building with a similar function in
right.
the same exact place for many years.
Many years, yes, sir.
To the point where it had to be redone, which is
Yes.
what we're talking about tonight.
Right.
Okay. Any comments or questions on item K?
Mr. Mayor, if I may make a comment.
Please.
So the commission recommended approval with some contingencies. My understanding is those contingencies have been met and submitted this morning. I
Thank you
haven't
very
seen
much.
those, but that's my understanding.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on item K? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve item K.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number L, discussion, consideration, and possible action on ordinance 2023-17 rezoning request for a property from A1 General Agriculture to R1 Single Family Residential for property near Larkspur and Overland Drive, which is 2023-15.
You want?
No, go ahead. I'm just.
Okay.
I figured I'll be needing it.
Yeah, you probably will. The subject property is approximately 1.96 acres. It's currently a vacant lot. It's made up mostly of agricultural zone property with single-family residential properties across the street. Staff has signed off supporting the approval of this plat. It is generally in line with the future land use map for that area. And would you like?
So is this the plat or the?
Wait.
This is the final
Rezone.
plat.
No, this is the rezone.
Rezone's the first
I
one.
believe we're talking about rezone.
Yeah,
Final
rezone.
plat's next.
Yeah,
Rezone from ag to single
Ag.
family.
to single, yeah. Right. I got my papers mixed
There
up.
you go.
I'm sorry. Let me see.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
This is your second one.
this may be a little premature because it's just for rezoning, but the next agenda item also is for plating. And you have the exact same issue as we just had. This parcel that you see that's shaded, the subject parcel, was carved off from the larger parcel to the west, all of which is in the city limits, leaving that parcel to the west with no access to any public street. There is a related owner that abuts Wilson, but it's a residential lot that's pretty narrow that ties into that. And it's not the same owner, it's just a related owner. And so I don't know if the applicant wants to consider the zoning separate from the plat, but you're ending up with the exact same issue. You've got a piece of property that's been carved off a larger parcel in violation of the then existing ordinance and asking to have it platted.
So the person that sold the parcel off landlocked their own property by selling this smaller parcel off?
In fact, they did.
Okay.
And not just landlocked their own property, violated the ordinance.
Yeah, and
That's,
also
yeah.
at the same time violating the ordinance.
Yeah.
Ordinance. I've learned so much about orphan properties this year. So, I do want the rezone to be considered separate from the plat. And the reason being is I'm working on the plat. I know the plat's gonna be tonight because there's orphan property. So I'm working with that property owner to the west to actually obtain some property just north of our subject property to give it access to the road. So it kind of eliminates the whole orphan property argument. So it's not happened yet. So I just want, right now, I like for it to be rezoned from ag to R1 because at least that's half my battle. And as far as I know, the status of the property still can't do anything. Still can't be built on or anything. With it rezoned to R1 until it's platted, but at least that's half my battle. And I can get it rezoned, and then I can work on the plat next.
And that's in support of the zoning plan. So any questions or comments on the zoning effort for this property? Yeah, I make a motion then that we approve item L1, which is the ordinance 23-17, section 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number L2 next is the emergency clause that would be applied to this resolution that we just passed, and I'll make a motion that we approve the emergency clause, which is section 2 of O 2023-17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Now, item M, which is the discussion, consideration, and possible action on a final plat for this property.
Yes. I guess he
He
left.
knows. He knows.
Maybe just table it.
Take a motion to take no action.
That'd be fine.
Make a motion to take no action on 4M.
Second that.
I think you really need to move to, you could either just take no action, you really probably need a motion to approve or a motion to deny
Can we just table it?
the plat. I mean, you can take no action on it, and they can bring it back later if they want to.
They'll have to go before the planning commission.
Yeah, they'll have to
again.
go back through the process if they
Process,
want
and
to plat.
To make it clean then, I make a motion that we deny item number M on this property final plat request.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller?
Yes.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
Councilmember Shear?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu?
Yes.
Mayor Tucker?
Yes. Item number N, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a planned unit development request for property near Wilson and North First Avenue, which is 2023-25. And to be clear, this is the property I believe that Ms. Wilson spoke about earlier.
Ms. Gibson.
Ms. Gibson, I apologize.
Yes, this
Thank you.
is,
Too many Wilsons on.
it's located on Wilson Street. They're asking for a PUD for, multi-purpose family. They'll have 360 units. I think, you want to speak on this? Sure.
Good evening, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here with the applicant, who's Don Dillingham. So what the PUD request is for is a multifamily project, 12 buildings, 360 units. There are a handful of comments in the staff report regarding various infrastructure pieces. We understand that there may be some upsizing needed in water lines, sewer lines. Whatever your staff requires is ultimately what we will do. This is in line with your long-range plan. Staff does recommend approval. Planning Commission also unanimously recommended approval last week. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Talk to us, Mr. Box, about parking on this property.
So we believe that the code requirements would significantly overpark us. So what we've requested is for one-bedroom units, 1.5 spaces per unit, and then for two-bedroom unit, two spaces per two-bedroom unit. Now, ultimately, if the council demands that we meet your code, we'll do that, but we do believe that that would significantly overpark us. So that would be our request.
And what experience drives you to that conclusion that that's too many parking spaces for this property?
Sure. So other similar developments, the request that we have is in line with many other municipalities that I work in. For instance, Oklahoma City, this is in line with what their parking regs would be for the multifamily use unit.
Yeah, but it's not Durant's. It's not Durant's.
Sure.
Okay.
But we leave it to your discretion.
I think the hiccup we've had with apartment complexes in this area is a large amount of college students wanting residency, in which case you're going to have two-bedroom apartments where you have 2 to 4 students, and you got 4 students sharing a 2-bedroom, and you got 4 cars, and you've only allotted them 2 spaces, and now we've got flooding out onto the streets, and that's kind of.
We've got some experience with that.
The First Street apartments are a great example of that.
And I understand that some apartment complexes put kind of a cap on amount of residents, or they put a cap that they don't let college students rent from them. Whatever. It happens. They have friends over, spending the night, doesn't matter. It's an issue in that area, big time.
For this complex, what would be your target customer? Would it be a college student, perhaps?
I mean, that would certainly be one of the people that we'd be targeting to, but I think we believe that there is a shortage of units within the city, and so it's a broader tenant mix than just targeting students, but we anticipate that there would be some interest from students, yes.
What are our current requirements for parking? I know he was asking to reduce them. What are our current requirements?
2.5 per unit.
Per bedroom.
Per bedroom.
I think it's by unit for our residential. I think for residential it's just.
It doesn't break it down by the number of bedrooms, it's just by the key, basically?
Off the top of my head, I think that's correct.
Okay.
2.5 per unit? Is that what it was? Was it 2.5 per unit? Is that what he said?
That's what he said, yeah.
I like
mean,
the current requirements myself. I don't wanna reduce that. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, just our given circumstance we have already with parking problems we have.
And
What is-
we're happy to accept that.
What does planning say? What do you say?
Sorry.
What do you say about the parking requirements?
So the Planning Commission did recommend approval. Reason being is they had they were going to restrict to 1 and 2 bedroom. We have others that are 3 and 4, et cetera. I will say we also have a restricted scope that the council does not. So we don't consider traffic. We don't consider some of the issues that the community else does. We're simply looking at that single development. So you all have a much broader scope to look at. To your other Gohard's point is we've had some issues on,
Sure.
is it First Street Apartments, is that the name of it?
Yeah, and
No,
Wood Manor.
Wood Manor.
Wood Manor
Thank you.
also.
Wood Manor, we have some overflow on Wilson already, so to make that mistake twice, certainly could affect traffic, so that's not necessarily in our purview, but certainly a consideration for council.
And Mr. Box, I'll give you an opportunity to address Ms. Gibson's concern about traffic. She lives in the area. We already have students parking on Wilson on the street.
So perhaps if we adhere to the parking requirements, that'll relieve some of those concerns. So again, it was a point that we'd like to bring, but we're not, we don't want to have the project, denied because of it. So we're happy to meet your requirements.
I think if we make the contingency, I'm okay with it.
Any other comments or questions? Anything else that needs to be brought before the council tonight?
May I ask, what was the number again, please?
360.
Yes, I have that, but as far as the parking now, you said it was.
2.5 per unit is what the code requires.
So we're looking at 700 or something.
Any other comments or questions, council? Do I hear a motion?
What are we on N?
Motion to approve,
For N?
4N.
I'll second.
And that would be contingent upon compliance with the
Contingent
existing.
on compliance with current city code. Yes.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu,
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Now we're on item O, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action on a preliminary plat extension for property near Larkspur and Prairie Crossing, which is 23-26.
This property already has an approved preliminary plat that is set to expire September 14th. No change has been requested to approve the preliminary plat. The applicant stated the University Boulevard project hampered his project. Staff doesn't have any issues with this extension, and it is Planning Commission recommended approval of 6 months extension.
Questions or comments of Mr. Hightower? Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. Commission did have the recommendation for council that they abide by the updated codes for sidewalks, streetlights. The applicant stated that was their intent anyways, but it should be noted that that was our
Absolutely.
suggestion. Thank you.
Further comments or questions on item O? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve 4O.
With contingency.
Okay. Contingent upon they abide by all city ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shear,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes. Item number P is discussion,
Thank you.
consideration, and possible action on allowing Mr. Hobbs to connect 30 lots to city sewer and 90 lots to city water.
Yes, Mr. Hobbs asked me to present this on the council agenda.
Okay.
This piece of property is located on McLean. It is in the county, but it will be our sewer and our water that he's requesting to hook to, so there wouldn't be any problems with collecting fees for sewer or anything, because it'll all be ours.
But it's in the county, so does it affect a rural water district?
Rural water has no water lines in that area. We actually have water there.
Right.
So.
Already? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the city services that area and the
Yes,
rural
sir.
water does not?
Right.
Okay.
We do have some problems with water pressure out there during the summer.
That was my next question, was capacity.
Yes, we're working on that, as me and Rick's been working on that, we're thinking about putting a booster pump out there for pressure to serve that side of town. So,
And that would need to be done irregardless of this development?
yes.
Does the water line that we need from Gail Farrell to the south side of town, if that's in, will that take care of the pressure?
Yes, it would.
Where are we on that?
Still looking for money. Yeah, that's a pretty high dollar project. So, Mr. Hobbs here, if y'all have any questions for him.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, so I was gonna, let me hand you guys something real quick. So I started this quite a while back when Marty was here, and kind of what happened is I've actually already engineered it with Barker. So when I met with Marty, the deal was everything flows, it's pretty deep over to the Lee Heights addition. So even though it's 90 lots, most of my lots are half-acre lots that do to meet regular septic. The middle in the little square, you'll see I made them the smaller ones so Barker engineered it what would work for, I've got a copy of that too, I can leave with y'all, but I didn't bring a big copy. And I paid that to do the sewer flow, water flow, where everything's good. So that's as many as I could do with put on the city. Problem was kind of like what the steel mill had. Then I found out I have got a blanket easement. So I never pursued. All the land in there had a blanket easement. So I get with an attorney here in town and just got that cleared up. So I found out like if I tried to sell, couldn't sell a house, of course. So that's my question is it's going to be, I know it's outside the city, but it's paved streets and everything like that. It's going to be a nice subdivision. But if those 30 would let me get a little more lots for what I pay and having it on the sewer, and that's kind of what I would ask. And it's going to take a while, like on the cleanup, getting in roads and all that. So if Mr. Hightower says like it's this much on a pump, or even if a pump and you say, hey, a pump's this much, will you help us get a pump to get you going? I'd be entertain the idea of that, to help me get water to get the project going. That's kind of the background and why I've said so. The preliminary plat already went, of course not to you guys, but it's already been signed off by the county commissioners and everything, and then I hit the snag with the blanket easement. That has been resolved, and there's back by the back of Lee Heights, there's like a little pump, used to be a pump station. So we have a dedicated easement that Paige did for me to get to that, and then all the blanket easement has been removed on my 46 acres. Thank you.
Okay, comments or questions from the council? Mr. Hobbs or Mr. Hightower?
That's up to you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we're,
So I would say like make that a prerequisite before you add in that many more houses, because you wouldn't have any water, I don't think. The pump first, because right now, it is a trickle.
all right, thank you.
And that's what we're looking into, trying to solve that
Right,
problem. So.
right.
Yeah, we've been working with
Brandon.
Brandon. They've been getting some figures for us that we'll be discussing with finance department to try to come up with funding.
Maybe we should wait.
So is this something that
I personally
we?
like the idea of if we're gonna give him, rather than splitting it, why not make it all? I mean, if he's got 90 lots there, he ought to be sewer and water.
Yeah.
If we can do that, rather than part of it water and sewer, and part of it just,
How many of these lots will be on sewer?
I told him 30, and I'd have to look on that plat, it's 30, 33, right in there, the ones right there in the center. And here's the other, if the property has an exit on McLean and on, over by the steel mill. So, which gave it good for traffic flow, but from what I understand, there's rural water 5 over on that one end, but of course, we can't get rural water 5 either. I would rather the clients have the city and the city make the money on that, but I told Mr. Hightower that if it comes down to, because I'll still be waiting on till rural water 5, all that stuff gets worked out, but even if the council, instead of getting tabled, if it says, hey, we'll give you sewer, but we're not giving you water, or if we say, hey, we'll give you sewer, but this has to get worked out before you get water, I'd like to have it, you know, and the city makes the money on, that would be whatever you guys say. If you say, hey, we're only gonna give you water to this many, or we'll give it to 90 because we wanna make the money, really whatever's best for the city, but the sewer is the most important in respect to what the county, I have to totally redo my plat if those lots won't meet because they won't be half acre.
Right.
So very, very important there. If I have to wait on rural water 5, or you to get your deal and you just say, you tell Public Works, say, hey, he's not getting water till we get this fixed, or he's going to go to rural water 5. So the sewer is the highest priority, but I would like to have city water. But if you, to keep from getting tabled or something, you say, we'll look at this, but sewer only for an hour, that, I just want you to know that's the biggest priority is the sewer.
but you're only asking for 30 lots on the city sewer, and you're asking for 90 lots on water.
Right, and the water is, the sewer is the most important, and that's
Yeah.
more like if the city wants to make the money.
I mean, so how come you're not asking for 90 lots?
Right,
on the
that-
city?
It won't fall, like in the cost of when Barker engineered it. All of those right there fall the way the manhole is.
Well, that gets back to having a pump station. Are you willing to put a pump station in?
Like that, I would get into replat and everything again, but I would get a lot more lots. So back then, from what I was told, like, what it would cost me to, I would probably actually be better off for what you're saying, for the amount of lots, for what I can get for the cost of the lots to do that, after talking with some other builders that have did stuff like that. But it was more that already spending all the engineering money, the plat money, and everything there.
Did
The
you
way,
ever-
the way the property falls, all of that little section falls real good over to that corner of Lee Heights toward McLean.
Did you
But
ever consider this being annexed in the city limits?
it would probably be good for, you know, like that, you know.
What kind of roads are you planning on putting in?
There'll be asphalt roads,
Will they?
yeah.
will
And they'll
they
do
be
kinda like
county
what,
standards or city standards?
county,
City standards are higher, aren't they?
right. Still doing the concrete, if you look at like, I did it out of my Orchard subdivision south at the county, so we still have the concrete, and we still put the 6 inches of the deal. It won't be 6 inches of asphalt, but kinda like what David Jones did at Wilson Place too, so. I'm
Curb
gonna-
and guttered? Is it curb and guttered?
It's not a full curb and gutter, it's like the concrete, like gutter type.
Just a-
Yeah,
So being annexed in the city, you'd have to abide by all ordinances.
right, that would be a
sidewalks,
negative to
lighting.
me for what I've got in, you know, and just to be upfront with you, like the attractiveness of it was I've learned this from like the ones I put in the better road, you're gonna get more than your money back, like on the lot deal.
Right.
The problem with it is if you do city roads, unless you did like the lift station, you know, the amount of lots you get in there, you can't hardly get your money back. Cause you know, if you do half, you know, you got a lot bigger lots, you know, in the amount of the lots you do, so. That's kinda when I'd met with Marty before and I said, hey, these fall, that's why we engineered it kinda like.
Much better do it to county standards and then have the residents request be annexed to the city, because, and then you're not up to city codes, city standards.
It'll definitely be a lot better than most of the city streets though.
Ouch.
I don't mean that bad, but I mean, we plan on. But anyway, the sewer is most important. If we could get sewer for that amount of lots, where the city makes the money on that, then y'all are gonna know more. I don't know what the city makes on water. If you say, we're not giving you water, we'll give it to this many, or it's better for us to give to this.
We
I
don't
really-
want
I
to
have
give you
no
sewer
clue on
without
that
the
kind of
water.
stuff. Huh?
We don't want to give you sewer without the water. That's
Okay.
our hiccup. It's
Okay.
because we can't shut
Oh,
the
you look
water
at
off.
the gallons and.
We can't shut sewer off. We can shut your water off. So if you don't pay your bill,
I see, okay,
so we want you to have our water if you have our sewer.
okay, I see.
Yep.
Comments or questions?
Does the city manager have any comments on this?
I would prefer, the lift station, and we get the 90 sewers compared to the 90 waters. And like you said, it would actually benefit you in the long run
And did you say?
on
you
your
would
lot
con-
sizes.
Did you say you would consider helping or paying for the booster pump?
Yeah, Mr. Hightower can tell me that I'm blind to that, if you're gonna say that's $1 million or that's $100,000.
I got you.
Well, we already got your name here, so.
I would definitely do the lift station for the amount of lots. If I can use the sewer, because it's gonna be more than 90 lots though, to offset my cost, because I wouldn't need half-acre lots.
Right.
I wanna keep
Right.
some bigger lots, because that's an appeal, but with your deal, like, yeah, if I could do that and I'll do it all city water and city sewer, and then I can, I'll replat and then redo my engineering, but it would be worth it if I grow just using numbers, but if I grow 25 lots,
And-
it's worth me doing that.
Philip, what's your comment on that?
Getting tired of getting up there and
I know we're gonna wear him out tonight.
For for having a lift station, we've been recommended that the lift station stay private. That's the only,
To service it.
yeah, because, I have a whole bunch of lift stations I have to take care of already, but yeah, with other places that want to put
Right,
lift stations.
I
yeah.
agree with that, but the 90 sewer connections would be important to the city, just like the 90 water.
Yes, and we have the capacity of sewer.
Right.
And if we can work with Brandon and get the pump in there, the water should be good too.
Mr. Mayor, if that's a consideration, I would probably recommend that this be with at least an acknowledgement that this is proceeding, or at least being considered. Take no action and put it on a future meeting, because if there's going to be a lift station and there's going to need to be an agreement for a private lift station, there's some considerations that need to be addressed more than what we could probably do on the fly here tonight with that.
Yeah,
But
and if you let me know, like your contingencies, like what y'all did before, because I'm fine with that. I'm kind of like, so the blanket easement hold me up 3 years, so I'm kind of like, I'm in for whatever to make it work. If you sit there and say, hey, well, because I've got to start over with the plating, I've got to start all over anyway. If you say, Alan, if you'll do this, but, and you give me all your contingencies, I'll just make the contingencies work. You know what I mean? So instead of, because right now I can't even start the plat till you say,
Right.
we'll give you this, but you gotta, only if you do this, and
Right.
I'm willing to whatever you tell me to do.
Can we at least get an estimate on what the booster pump's gonna be? Maybe by the
It's-
next time it's.
I've
coming
got
out?
just the pump in the house for it is about 350,000. That's not labor.
and that will serve more than just Mr. Hobbs'
Right.
development, so that's,
Yes,
yeah.
that'll serve.
Yeah, that will help that whole area.
Right.
I think we're probably all on the same page here. We don't have a problem as long as we have the capacity, and the booster is important. We can't approve this and then those get built before we can afford to put a booster in, and then we're
Yeah, 'cause it'll make everybody
disservicing our
mad.
current
Okay,
people.
So let me ask you this, which won't, and I'm fine coming back. If I started with Page, the replat based on all sewer, because since sewer capacity's there, at least I could start working on this and then come back to you guys and we figure out something to do with the pump at that time.
Right.
But that way I can at least get the ball rolling.
I think
on
that's
mine.
where we're at, yeah.
If we
And I
can
think
do
this has been a productive conversation. Thank you.
And I wasn't asking for you to like foot the entire bill.
No.
I was just
No.
want to get an estimate,
No.
to see, what we need to do, if you're willing to give part in on it.
And I would, because here's the deal, I've probably got 4 projects in rural water 5. I can't do anything, so I'm sitting on a lot of land and I need to do
Right.
something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the housing won't there, so I need to do
Right.
something. And rural water 2 is actually shutting us down 6 months now, so I've got a bunch in rural water 2, and so I'm at a standstill and run out of lots and I have nowhere to go, so.
Right.
And we're working hard on
We are.
the pump.
Yeah.
I
So,
know. All my 5 of them. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So is it the council's pleasure to take no action on this item at this time? Again, I think that was a productive conversation, as much time as it took. That's the end of the administrative items on tonight's agenda for the city council. Next is item 5, new business. Do I hear any new business?
Yep.
Okay. Right.
Hearing
Maybe I
none,
might
the
as well.
next item is adjournment. I move for adjournment of the city council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Fuller.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Shear.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Simulescu.
Yes.
Mayor Tucker.
Yes, then we stand adjourned. At this time, I will call to order a meeting of the Durant City Utilities Authority unless someone needs a break.
Let's move. I'm so sad.
The
nobody wanted
clerk
to
will call
stay.
the roll, please.
Trustee Fuller.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Shear.
Here.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Here.
Chairman Tucker.
Here. Next is the consent item, and under the consent items tonight is item A, regular meeting minutes from August 8th, and B, approval of special meeting minutes from August 14th. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve consent items A and B.
Second.
Do I hear a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve all consent items. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Shear.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Yes.
Chairman Tucker.
Yes, item 2, there were no items removed from consent. Item 3, information, there are no items presented tonight. And item number 4, administration, item A is consider approval of a resolution establishing fees and costs charged by the City of Durant and the City Utility Authority for Durant Services, which is 2023-15.
Mayor, these are items that we overlooked on the last increase that was recently done. It's an extra dump on a polycart, and then it's our connections on the sewer taps and items where our cost went up for the supplies, and that's where this comes from. It's like 3-4 items, and then the miscellaneous fee, there's a service fee that was raised from 25, and we're requesting 30.
Okay, any questions or comments on these fees for the Utilities Authority? I move that we approve this resolution establishing fees and costs charged by the city, and this is our resolution 2023-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Shear.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Yes.
Chairman Tucker.
Yes. Item 5 is new business. Do I hear any new business to come before the Utilities Authority tonight? Next is adjournment. I move that we adjourn this meeting of the Durant City Utilities Authority.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Oh.
Trustee Shear.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Yes.
Chairman Tucker.
Yes, we stand adjourned. At this time, I will call to order a meeting of the Durant Airport Authority. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Shear.
Here.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Here.
Chairman Tucker.
Here. The only order of business, I'll save you all the paragraph numbers, is the approval of minutes from the August 8th regular meeting and the August 21st special called meeting. Any questions or comments on those meeting minutes? I move that we approve all consent item agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Shear.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Yes.
Chairman Tucker.
Yes. There are nothing to be considered under the remaining items, and I move for adjournment of the Durant Airport Authority meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Trustee Fuller.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Shear.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Simulescu.
Yes.
Chairman Tucker.
Yes, we stand adjourned. And that, folks, is